So the background to this is that over the long term you need to see a global carbon market develop. You need to see the carbon price prevalent right throughout the energy system, not just in certain locations. So under the original Kyoto Protocol, that was enabled through the top-down approach and the distribution of assigned amount units. And obviously that was to developed countries initially, but you could have imagined, an expanded Kyoto Protocol doing that to handing out units to a broader range of countries. So effectively heading towards a global cap and trade. But we're not in that world today. And so what IETA wanted to do, still with the same ambition and the same goal of the eventual global carbon market, was to think of ways in which you could create the same outcome, but in the bottom-up world of individual, nationally determined contributions. So we started this work under the framework for various approaches, and we've extended it into the LCA, the ADP, and we came up with this straw proposal. And what the straw proposal does is, first of all, it sets a benchmark for accounting. Obviously you have to account for units, and I think there's a lot of agreement around that. But it goes a step further, and it imagines a transfer system in place, which is in effect a plug-and-play mechanism to allow independently designed emission trading systems to link together. We've supported that with work that's been done through the Harvard Kennedy School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in fact they produced a report on the linking of heterogeneous systems. So all of the detail about how that finally evolves is not fully worked out yet, although we're continually to do research on the underpinnings for it. What the straw proposal does is it puts in place a marker in the Paris Agreement to allow that idea to develop, beyond just simple accounting procedures that your unit and my unit have interchanged. And that's what we'd like to see. The plug-and-play idea allows a sort of a harmony between systems, such that if you've got an emissions trading system within your economy or covering your entire economy, you can take it and link in with minimal fuss into an international or a growing international market. And the plug-and-play system acts as an incentive for you to come and do that, in the same way as the Clean Development Mechanism acted as an incentive to implement projects all over the world. And that's what the straw proposal is all about. And I was in a panel earlier, and this question was asked as to, so why do we need this? And the example I came up with, which is completely different to emissions trading or currency trading or any of these things, was the internet. So way back in the 90s, CERN in Geneva invented the Internet Protocol system. In effect, a plug and play, so that anybody could come along and join this global internet club, and it took off at an incredible speed. Now that's a fairly straightforward idea, and I don't think we can replicate that quite so simply in emissions trading systems. But the fact that they invented a mechanism at the center of the internet to allow other countries and users to join without too many problems, acted as a catalyst to the development of the internet itself. And so the straw man, in a similar sense, a plug-and-play system at the heart of the UN perhaps, acts as a catalyst not just to the linking, but to the creation of local systems that can link in to larger systems. And that's what we're trying to do.
So where do you see the kind of rule setting in terms of safeguards? Where would that come from? Would that come from a UN body, or would that be done at a regional or national level?
Well, I think you'd want to devolve as much of the design of the trading systems to the regional or national level. And the final step of linking into a more global market is at the UN level. And there are a variety of ways that you can do that. So, for instance, the World Bank, who AITA is also working with, has its networked carbon market proposal, which, it's an idea in the making. They're not saying that this is the only way forward. What they're saying is that they're introducing the concept of exchange rates as a mechanism to allow this trading system and this trading system to talk to each other, because they may be built on different levels of ambition with different design criteria, and although a ton is a ton in each one, they mean different things in the context of each trading system. And so when they link together, there's an exchange rate between them. In exactly the same way there's an exchange rate for currencies.
A ton of carbon in India is not necessarily going to be worth the same as a ton in the UK for fairly obvious developmental reasons.
They may be based on... So for instance, an Indian system might be based, well, there is one based on energy efficiency, which doesn't have quite the effectiveness of reducing carbon as a cap and trade system. So it improves efficiency very effectively. That's what it's designed to do. And a spin-off of improving efficiency may be some reduction in actual carbon emissions. But it's not as guaranteed as a cap and trade system. So when you plug those two together with carbon as your objective, you may have an exchange rate between them. That's not to say that the Indian efficiency system is not a good system. It's just that when you bring it into the context of carbon as being your objective, you can't give it the same value as a cap and trade system. So that's one way of doing it. We did several submissions to the UN under the framework for various approaches where we proposed a different way, which was in effect to set the exchange rate up front with the distribution of something that looked like an assigned amount unit, but only to countries that were interested in joining. This was not an obligatory system under the UN, but it was another way of implementing linkage between various systems. There's probably other ways of doing it as well, but I think the text that we're proposing for the Paris Agreement is to create that marker to see that system develop.
And you seem to have the political support of the French government. Francois Hollande was talking about a carbon price last week. There seem to be so many businesses, even Tony Hayward from Glencore was calling for a carbon price. I mean, given there is this level of support, are you, at least from business and some governments, are you confident from an AITA position that there will be some reference to markets in a Paris text?
So I think from the climate summit last year in New York, where it was a hard ask to even get carbon pricing on the agenda, we've made an enormous leap in 10 months. So I think the signs are good that the Paris Agreement will at least reference the importance of carbon pricing over and above just talking about markets. But I think we'd like to go that step further and actually say, well, what does carbon pricing mean? It means a global market for carbon instruments that's somehow unified and producing the same price signal right throughout the energy system. Now, we're not going to get all that into the Paris Agreement, but the marker to establish a route towards that is what we're aiming for.
And last question, from big businesses, is that what when you hear people talking about a level playing field, are you saying that is that what they're talking about? If there is a level price signal across the world, is that what businesses are asking for?
Yes. So many businesses have talked about carbon pricing. And certainly, as you commented, we saw that last week at the Business and Climate Summit in Paris. But there is an underlying concern that you have a $50 price in one place and a $3 price in another place. And over time, that changes the terms of trade between those two regions, and that's a concern. So linking together these various systems and harmonizing the price does introduce that level playing field. I think if we can do that, we can get a lot more business support for the idea of carbon pricing.